Big opinion. It's time to fix our housing crisis. Build, baby, build. See you at 9.
Europe is in the grip of the most devastating humanitarian crisis since World War II.
The people of Ukraine are facing unimaginable suffering
as their homes are destroyed and their loved ones are killed.
Millions of people are being forced to flee for their lives, carrying only their children, their pets, and the clothes on their back.
The pain, loss and destruction grows by the day.
The people of Ukraine urgently need our help.
Already a vast humanitarian operation is underway. Britain's Disasters Emergency Committee, or DEC, brings together 15 leading aid charities to respond to overseas disasters quickly and efficiently. These charities include the British Red Cross, CARE, Oxfam, Save the Children and World Vision.
Their teams are working on the ground in Ukraine and neighbouring countries to bring vital aid to those who need it most. If you can spare it, your gift to the DEC's humanitarian appeal will go a really long way.
£10 provides essential hygiene supplies for a person for a month.
£50 provides blankets for 4 families.
£100 provides emergency food for 2 families per month.
It's easy to give. You can donate online at dec.org.uk or call the 24-hour donation line on 0370 60 60 900. If you prefer to send a cheque, please post it to the Ukraine Humanitarian Appeal, PO Box 999, London, EC 3A 3AA. To give £10 on your mobile, simply text the word crisis to 70150. Standard network charges apply for calls and you must be 16 or over. Texts are charged at the standard network rate and your £10 donation will be added to your bill.
100% of your donation goes directly to the DEC to save lives and deliver critical support where it's needed.
Busy show tonight. We've pushed the boat out. In the big question, is our society too obsessed with sex? My Mark Meets guest is the author of a stunning new book on the challenges of reporting the troubles in Northern Ireland. In the news agenda with my brilliant panel, is Rishi Sunak too rich to be Prime Minister? And with Brooklyn Beckham splashing the cash on his nuptials this weekend, are big weddings immoral? Tackling those topics and many more is my all-star panel, Rebecca Jane, Mike Parry and Chris Akabusi. And in 2 minutes' time, my big opinion monologue. It's time to fix our broken housing market. Build, baby, build. First up, the headlines, and with me all evening, Bethany Elsey.
Thanks, Mark. I am Bethany Elsey in the GB newsroom. Boris Johnson has pledged economic and defensive military support to Ukraine following talks with President Volodymyr Zelensky in Kyiv. The Prime Minister said he made his surprise visit to the Ukrainian capital as a show of our unwavering support for the people of Ukraine. Britain has agreed to send 120 armoured vehicles and new anti-ship missile systems to support the country against Russia's aggression. Boris Johnson says with allies, the UK is going to ratchet up economic pressure and continue to intensify sanctions on Russia.
Together with friends and partners, we, the UK and others, supply the equipment, the technology, the know-how, the intelligence, so that Ukraine will never be invaded again.
President Volodymyr Zelensky has praised the courage of his fellow Ukrainians in the ongoing aggression against Russia. In a video address, the Ukrainian president suggested Russia was the largest country in the world by its aggressiveness and is attacking the largest country for courage in Ukraine. He called for sanctions on all Russian banks and for an embargo on oil. He urged other countries to do everything to hold Russian soldiers and their commanders accountable for their crimes against the Ukrainian people.
I'm grateful to the United Kingdom that continues and intensifies the sanctions and also provides a significant support of Ukraine by reinforcing our defence capacities. Other democratic Western countries should follow the example of the UK. It's time to impose a complete embargo on Russian energy resources, and they should increase the amount of weapons being supplied.
In other news, the royal family has released a poetic tribute to mark the first anniversary of the Duke of Edinburgh's death. The poem, written by the poet laureate Simon Armitage, is called The Patriarchs, an Elegy. He died on this day last year at Windsor Castle, just months short of his 100th birthday.
Husbands to duty, they unrolled their plans across billiard tables and vehicle bonnets, regrouped at breakfast. What their secrets were was everyone's guess and nobody's business. Great-grandfathers from birth, in time they became both inner core and outer case in a family heirloom of nesting dolls.
And the first all-private astronaut team has docked with the International Space Station in an historic mission. This NASA footage shows the SpaceX rocket ship arriving after a 20-hour flight. Passengers include one former NASA astronaut and 3 paying customers. They're visiting the station 250 miles above Earth for the 8 days of science and biomedical research. On TV, online and DAB+ radio, this is GB News. Now it's back to Mark.
Many thanks to Bethany Elsey, who returns in an hour's time. It is Saturday the 9th of April and you're watching and listening to Mark Dolan tonight. And we've got a cracking evening of Saturday night entertainment for you. Big stories, big opinions and plenty of laughs along the way. In the big question, is Britain now too obsessed with sex? We'll speak to the star of a new Channel 4 series all about sex. My Mark Meets guest is the author of a stunning new book about the extraordinary dangers faced by journalists who reported the Troubles. Here's the book. It's an amazing read. It's an incredible story. Derek Henderson, co-author of Reporting the Troubles 2, joins me at 10. Plus, another great British game show and my alternative news headlines tonight featuring Will Smith. Wonder why he's in the news. And tennis ace Boris Becker. With me reacting to the big stories of the day is my fantastic panel tonight of lawyer and broadcaster Rebecca Jane, Fleet Street and radio legend Mike Porky Parry, and Olympian and bona fide national treasure Chris Akabusi. Brilliant stuff. Well, my priority is to get your opinions on the national television airwaves. The best bit of my show is when you get in touch. So drop me a line now and, of course, before 11. mark@gbnews.uk. You know the rules. We don't do boring. Not on my watch. I just won't have it. And you never know what's going to happen. We don't do predictable either. It is Saturday night, so grab something cold and fizzy from the fridge or fire up the kettle and tear open the rich tea biscuits. Yum, yum. And let's get to work. House prices in the UK are growing at their fastest rate since 2004, posting their 8th consecutive monthly increase. Last month, annual house price growth increased from 12.6% in February to 14.3% in March. This, according to Nationwide. Now, a modest appreciation in the value of your property is desirable, but skyrocketing house prices are bad news for everyone. A housing market is only fit for purpose if a good proportion of the population, particularly young people, have access to it. In the 80s, a mortgage was based on about 3 times your income. Now it can be 6 or 7 or 8 times. The moral case for young people being able to get on the housing ladder in particular is irrefutable. Every Englishman's home is his castle, and an Irishman, and a Welshman, and a Scotsman. Why should young people forego the opportunity to own an asset, to put a roof over their head and build something for the future? Why should that be the exclusive domain of people that were lucky enough to buy houses in the 70s, 80s and 90s for a fraction of what they would cost now? They weren't clever, they were simply the beneficiaries of an underinflated housing market. But now it's got silly. Properties should grow in value by a few grand a year, of course, but not tens or hundreds of thousands. And ultimately, a house, whilst being an asset, is where you live, which is why properties should not become another commodity, like shares, purely for the achievement of speculative riches. You should first and foremost want to actually live there rather than profit from it. Or you may have purchased a rental property, which for many has proved to be a modern-day alternative to a pension. But housing shouldn't be a get-rich-quick scheme, because the moment this market becomes like a night at the casino, it's a gamble we all lose. So the moral case for a sensible housing market is clear, but the economic case is a strong one too. Because why should this generation of young people bother engaging with the economy if they don't have a stake in it? In the end, if the system doesn't work for the millions of people in this country in their 20s and 30s, some even stuck in flat shares into middle age, why should they bother working hard, doing overtime at the office, or even start their own business if they know that even then the dream of home ownership will be unattainable? I predict that if home ownership proves to be unattainable in the medium to long term, the millions of people frozen out of the housing market, including those who aren't old enough to vote yet, will reject the principles of a modern free economy. The likelihood of a hard-left populist leader may come along, a Jeremy Corbyn on acid, threatening to smash the capitalist system altogether and appropriate homes on behalf of the state, as happened in the 60s and 70s under the compulsory purchase scheme. Who could blame young people for voting for such a figure? If our economy doesn't work for young people, they will ultimately seek leaders who can change it in their favour. It's not just young people who deserve a break. Why does it help the economy so much if people on lower incomes are able to hold out hope of one day getting onto the housing ladder? Well, it drives ambition. You might be in a low-paid job, but you might take the view that if you save hard enough and sacrifice over many years, you'll get something. But at the moment, giving up that Starbucks coffee or crushed avocado sandwich, giving up your Netflix account or gym membership, it won't even touch the sides. And why should you gamble your financial security by starting a business or break your back working 2 or 3 jobs if it doesn't get you closer to having a roof over your head? Home ownership shouldn't be easy, of course. It never was. And many of you will rightly tell me how you scrimped and saved and struggled to buy a house, even in the 60s, 70s and 80s. But it's now harder than ever and impossible for too many. It's having an effect on our demographics too, as people wait until their 30s or even early 40s before starting a family, because that's how long it takes to get a deposit together. Barriers to home ownership also perpetuate class division. A dinner lady, a courier, an electrician, a security guard, a postman, a taxi driver, a soldier, a teacher. It's important for all of these important groups, and many more, that home ownership is a possibility. If they've got no chance, then that will revive old class divisions that we thought we'd seen the back of. The potential of home ownership is the essence of social mobility, as Margaret Thatcher proved in the 80s. Margaret Thatcher made council houses available for purchase by tenants so that they could own an asset, have something to hand on to their children, and have a property that they could invest in with a conservatory, an extension, or new decor. And it also gave them an asset on which they could take out a mortgage or a loan with which to start a business, take international holidays, or buy a new car. Love her or hate her, this was a transformative policy from Margaret Thatcher, which drastically expanded the middle class and arguably smashed the class system altogether. So how do we fix this? Easy. We need 3 policies. Build more houses, and build more houses. Just 11% of the UK is urban, 89% is rural. It's time to drastically loosen rules around building on brown and indeed green belt areas. That's right, green belt areas where it can be justified. It's time for a partnership between local and central government to smash NIMBYism, the dreadful acronym which stands for Not in My Backyard. Also, our great cities like Manchester, Birmingham, London, Glasgow, Cardiff and Belfast have too many individual smaller housing units, 1 or 2 bedroom properties, which are profitable for house builders. What we really need is properties offering a higher density of occupation, like old-fashioned mansion blocks, and better built, higher spec, safer apartment buildings. The government must stop house building companies from sitting on land waiting for it to appreciate rather than actually building. It's simply a question of supply and demand. We've got to build, baby, build. The aforementioned Jeremy Corbyn, with whom I don't agree about much, famously proposed building 1 million new homes in 5 years. That's right, 1 million new homes in 5 years at a cost of £75 billion. Jez we can. Sounds a lot, doesn't it? 75 billion. And yet it's an absolute drop in the ocean compared to the hundreds of billions which we spaffed away in the course of this pandemic. What would you rather have spent the money on over the last 2 years? A test and trace system that didn't work for 37 billion, or 500,000 new homes for the same cash with 500 million quid in spare change left over? Which would be a greater legacy? It's time for a house building revolution in this country, and if you increase supply, house prices will come down to a sustainable level. And with more supply, rents will fall too. And the rental market will always be an important part of the mix, which many millions will always choose. And these new houses would be more eco-friendly too, so Insulate Britain won't have to lie down on any more motorways. Sorting out housing is a moral and economic imperative, and it will transform the fortunes of this country, just as it did when we rebuilt Britain after the Second World War. A huge investment in housing happened in the 50s and 60s, which paved the way for an economic miracle in the 80s and 90s. And just think of the high-quality jobs it will create. Build, baby, build. It will be great for Britain, especially its young people. You can bet your house on it. Reacting to that and the big stories of the day is my amazing panel tonight. Fleet Street legend, broadcaster and writer Mike Parry. We also have author, lawyer and presenter Rebecca Jane and three-time Olympian Chris Akabusi. Great to have all three of you with me. Chris, if I could start with you. Is it time to build, baby, build?
So, Mark, it's very interesting dialogue that you had there, or should I say monologue that you had there, but I'm not quite sure that I agree with everything you've said. I'm sure that there are some young people who, in their early 20s, want to get onto the housing ladder. I'm sure that they are there. But I think things have changed. I look at my two eldest daughters. One's 37, the other one's 33. The 37-year-old travelled the world, educated in America, has got a global village of friends. She's rented an MK Milton Keynes, now rents in London, and doesn't look like she's settling down anytime soon. She's very happy to have the surety of what she spends the money on her rent, her income, the responsibility being with the landlord, and spend her money globetrotting. Her junior sister, 33, met her fellow when he was 17. She's now 33, 4 kids, 2 houses, and it was what she wanted and the way she worked hard to it. So I think that the young people find their way. With your monologue really is a relic of the past. Sorry, you know, in my day and age, when I was 23, I left to get married. Yeah, I was 23 and I got married. And I had my first child, Ashanti, when I was 28. And of course I got a house, because that's what we did then. You know, that was the projected direction for us. Get married, get a house, work hard, look after your kids. So, yes, if you want to get a house, work hard for it, I'm sure. But actually, I think the young people have got a different view of what they really, really want.
Well, I take your point, Chris, but are houses not, in relative terms, far more expensive than they were decades before?
Well, they are, Mark, but again, I served a lot in Germany, and house prices in Germany were very, very expensive, and therefore, only a few people owned houses. You know, rental was everyone rent. I mean, my then father-in-law, he was renting when he was 60. And everybody rented, is what you did. It allowed you flexibility, mobility, and yeah, it's just a different way of doing it, Mark. So I do get what you're saying. I'm very lucky. I've got my own home, and I got it, like you said, in the 80s, so maybe I'm being a bit naughty. But I just think that young people, or many young people, actually want to travel this wonderful world of ours, and I've got friends all over the globe. I'm not thinking of settling down anytime soon, so not in their 20s.
Rebecca Jane, have times changed? Should we lose our obsession with home ownership in this country?
Yes. I agree. I'm there. You know, for me, I've got different priorities. I'm a little smidgen younger than you lot. You know, although no comment. But yeah, no, I do feel like I'm the millennial generation, and you know, for all of our sins, our priorities have changed. It's about creating memories for me, and I do completely agree with, you know, it's a really nice idea to own a home and all the rest of it. But it's just not like the be-all and the end-all of my life. Creating a happy... Do you know what? Actually, what I will say is that when I was 21 and I was in property development and I did own a ridiculous house, and actually I've never been more stressed out in my whole entire life. And I don't want that kind of stress, even if it does mean having everything looking wonderful on a piece of paper. I prefer to have less stress, travel the world and have a lovely time in the process.
Well, Mike Parry, is an interest in home ownership generational?
The greatest security anybody can have in life is to own their own home. I don't, you know, I hear what Chris is saying, I hear what Rebecca's saying, but if you own your own home, when you get to a certain age, nobody can throw you out. You normally get a mortgage for about 25 years, OK? So if you buy in your mid-20s or when you're 30, by the time you're 50 or 55, you're safe. You're very safe in this world if you own your own home. Now, I'm very lucky. The very first house I ever bought cost me less than twice my salary. I bought a semi-detached house in Sale in Manchester. Rebecca, that's your territory. And it cost me £20,000 when the Daily Express were paying me £12,500. So I bought a property for less than twice my salary. Never had to sell it because, of course, it was very cheap. I've been lucky enough to acquire other properties as I've gone through life because I'm a baby boomer, and it was very cheap to buy houses in the 70s, the 80s and even the 90s when it then exploded. I bought as many as I could. Unfortunately now, and I'm not boasting, I'm very well off. For want of, you know...
The drinks are on you, Mike Parry.
Yeah, but what I'm saying is, the whole housing policy now, getting back to your monologue, Mark, what I don't think you stress enough is that although we build hundreds of thousands of properties in this country every year, we don't build enough houses. They're mostly apartments, they're mostly flats, they're mostly 2 or 3 bedrooms, and they go up into the sky. You look anywhere in all the big cities, and it's full of skyscrapers, full of flats. There were no skyscrapers in this country until the 60s, when all these nutty left-wing councils came along and said, we don't like these little terraced houses that people live in next door to each other, and they're all neighbours. We're going to put them into this hideous blocks of flats which are now falling to pieces if they haven't already been knocked down. We need a whole raft of new houses, not flats. There's flats all over the place. We need houses. And the point I mostly agree with you on is get moving onto the green belt and start building houses there. Because anybody who says you can't build on the green belt is a NIMBY, is a selfish individual living in a rural part of this country who doesn't want these smutty, you know, city dwellers to come out and live in a nice part of the country so they can see lambs, you know, camelling in the fields and wheat and all that. That's outrageous. Anybody who gets on an intercity train in this country and goes from London to the northeast or London to the northwest, once you've got out of Greater London, you see nothing but fields until you get to Manchester or Leeds or Newcastle. There's loads of room in this country. Let's level a lot of these green fields and turn them into housing estates, affordable housing estates, because it's cheaper to build houses outside of the great metropolises we have, and give them to the people who need them.
And Mike Parry, Greenbelt is often a misnomer. It's a mischaracterisation. You have a picture, don't you? You imagine a summer meadow with butterflies and daffodils, but a lot of Greenbelt is bog standard rural land.
Yeah, of course it is. It's also it's a part of the world where there are some nice big houses. But the people who like living in nice big houses don't want, smutty, urbanites living down the road in a
What do you mean, like dodgy?
No, I'm telling you, the snobbery of those who dwell in the country is what is stopping the expansion of the housing stock in this country, which we need desperately. If we're going to take all these people from the Ukraine, and I want to take as many as possible, they're coming here at the moment as a mother and 2 or 3 children. Hopefully one day their father and their husband will join them. What are we going to do? We should be a land for heroes, but we'll be a land of shoving people into horrible little 1-bedroom flats, 2 families living in 1 room and all that kind of stuff. It shouldn't happen in this country. We've got to civilise the housing market, and we've got to get a proper housing policy to make this country worth living in.
Rebecca Jane, very briefly, I've spoken to lots of young people who are frustrated or even angry that they've got no hope of getting on the housing ladder. Do you not accept my point that if the economy doesn't work for young people, they may reject its basic principles?
I do, actually. I do believe that the economy is, in a way, working for young people. The problem is not building more houses. I live in what you're talking about. I don't want... Our country is beautiful. It's amazing because
There's lots of it, though.
Knock it off, Mike.
There's lots of it.
Because we have beautiful fields, because we have greenery, that adds to my mental well-being. I don't want to be surrounded by 25,000 doll's house little boxes. That is not going to make young people appreciative.
Chris, what about this point that a lot of young people, of course, it's a free country, Chris, and your illustrious kids are going to travel the world and make their own choices. But what about those who do want to get on the housing ladder, who are maybe a school teacher or another very important noble job, but that doesn't get you anywhere near home ownership? What do we do for those people?
Well, I'm not quite sure that's the case. I mean, is it true that a school teacher can't, for example, get a pad? I mean, you've got to start somewhere. I mean, I didn't start in the home that I've got today. Yeah. I started off in a semi-detached, 2-bedroom, semi-detached. I was a soldier. We weren't rolling in it as a soldier, but because I was married, I made a decision. I didn't want to stay in the rental block with the squatty apartments, so I got my own private facility. So, yes, it's going to be a sacrifice. If you decide that's what you want to do, then that's what you want to do. Of course, I do understand there are a raft of people who cannot afford to get on the housing market, but I don't think it's the teacher. I don't think it's the key worker. I don't think it's the nurse. I think they can if they want to. And maybe you can't do it in London, but you can do it 50 miles outside of London. And then commute in. Look, I'm going to tell a young person how to do live their life. Yeah. But what I'm trying to say is, if you really want it and you commit yourself to it, you can make it. It might mean you can't have 3 holidays in a year, or it might mean that you can't have the car that you're looking for, but you can do it if you want. I did it at 25 because I was married and I wanted a family.
Young people waste so much of their money.
In your opinion, Mike?
On things that aren't important.
In your opinion, it's important to them. It doesn't have to be important to you.
I mean, Rebecca, you talked about travelling and all that.
Yes, love it.
All right, that's fine. Well, yeah, OK, you want to go travelling for 18 months or something like that. These students who go on gap years, OK? What's a gap year? A gap year is a waste of time.
We've been going on gap years for moons.
When you're too idle to get a job and actually settle down in life.
It's a bankable memory, Mike. It's a bankable memory.
Well, it's also a
life experience.
But it's non-bankable in bankable terms. You see what I mean? In money terms.
Yeah, but that's 20 years down the road. When you're 19 or 21,
young women,
live your life. Engage.
Young women, they spend thousands on clothes. They wouldn't even dream of saying, I'm not going to buy any more clothes. I'm going to put it all in my piggy bank and save up to put a deposit down on a house.
Judgmental.
They waste too much money.
Do you want to be tonight?
And middle-class kids as well know one of these days they can turn to the bank of mum and dad and that will bail them out. That is one of the dreadful downs of modern society.
What do we think of my dream team panel tonight? Sparks will fly. So excited about the conversations we're going to be having in the next hour and a half. Mike Parry, Rebecca Jane and Chris Akabusi coming in hot. We've got lots more to get through in the rest of the show. My Mark Meets guest is a remarkable journalist who's written a book all about reporting on the troubles in Northern Ireland. Hear his incredible story at 10. Also in the big question, which is next, has Britain got too obsessed with sex? I'll see you in 2.
Europe is in the grip of the most devastating humanitarian crisis since World War II.
The people of Ukraine are facing unimaginable suffering
as their homes are destroyed and their loved ones are killed.
Millions of people are being forced to flee for their lives, carrying only their children, their pets, and the clothes on their back.
The pain, loss and destruction grows by the day.
The people of Ukraine urgently need our help.
Already a vast humanitarian operation is underway. Britain's Disasters Emergency Committee, or DEC, brings together 15 leading aid charities to respond to overseas disasters quickly and efficiently. These charities include the British Red Cross, CARE, Oxfam, Save the Children, and World Vision.
Their teams are working on the ground in Ukraine and neighbouring countries to bring vital aid to those who need it most. If you can spare it, your gift to the DEC's humanitarian appeal will go a really long way.
£10 provides essential hygiene supplies for a person for a month.
£50 provides blankets for 4 families.
£100 provides emergency food for 2 families per month.
It's easy to give. You can donate online at dec.org.uk or call the 24-hour donation line on 0370 60 60 900. If you prefer to send a cheque, please post it to the Ukraine Humanitarian Appeal, PO Box 999, London, EC 3A 3AA. To give £10 on your mobile, simply text the word crisis to 70150. Standard network charges apply for calls and you must be 16 or over. Texts are charged at the standard network rate and your £10 donation will be added to your bill.
100% of your donation goes directly to the DEC to save lives and deliver critical support where it's needed.
Is it time to build, baby, build? What do you think about that? Well, Thomas has emailed in. Mark, does your panel, who think we should build on fields, understand where food comes from? We cannot produce enough food already, and if we keep building on fields, we rely more and more on Russia. Also, with global warming, food supplies will decline. What will you do then? Brilliant stuff. How about Andrew, who says, hi, Mark, great show. Building on the green belt is a totally silly idea, particularly when we need the farmers more than ever. Maybe there are just too many people in the country. Calm down, old Mike, calm down, says Steve. He's talking urban crap. Young people need affordable council-owned property built on brown sites. We can all accept that. Look, so many emails coming in. How about this from Felicity? Hi, Felicity. Thanks for your email. Hi, Mark. What we need is 2 new cities. This has been suggested before, but always gets put on the shelf. How about this Tonight Show? Janet, Mark, best panel ever. Always enjoy your show. Can't wait for the segment on sex. Well, Janet, let's get down to some sex right now, shall we? Because it's time for the big question. And tonight, are we too obsessed with sex in modern Britain? To help us answer this, I'm delighted to welcome in the studio one of the stars of Channel 4's Open House, the sex experiment, Precious Muir. Precious, welcome to the show.
Hiya, nice to see you.
Great to have you in the studio. My team and I were going through this afternoon all of the programmes on telly that are about sex. Right. Ex on the Beach, yes. Love Island, Naked Attraction, The Bachelor.
Yes.
I've auditioned for all those shows. They've not got back to me. Apparently I'm on file.
Right, so you're in the waiting list.
Never say never.
Never say never, babe.
But does what's on telly tell us that we're now a bit too interested in sex? It's gone beyond an expression of love for your partner into an obsession.
I don't think it's an obsession because obviously we're supposed to be, humans that are just experimenting and having a great time and living our best life.
Experimenting?
Well, yes.
Speak for yourself.
I mean, you've got to experiment.
Not with my lower back.
Oh, well, I mean, you don't have to go that far. Just like doing something out of the ordinary. I mean, missionary in your bed at home is boring. So we've got to kind of take it out of the bedroom and do something fun.
Okay.
Doesn't necessarily mean that you have to add a third person, like myself. But it's just something to do outside of the bedroom.
Well, you've had huge success with this show. It's on Channel 4 and it's called Open House, The Sex Experiment. So, first of all, what's the objective of the series? What are they trying to achieve?
The objective is basically having, couples come in and try to figure out with the therapist, the doctor, who goes through their relationship, what they're actually needing and lacking in their relationship and what they could actually accomplish from this experience. So they come in, they have an opportunity to meet all the singles, like myself, and they decide to go on a date if they want to go on a date, if I want to go on a date. This is very important, I need to express. We also have a choice. A lot of people on Twitter are like, Precious, it seems like everybody keeps picking you, but do you have a choice? I'm like, yes, if I'm not physically attracted, I'm going to say, no, guys, on to the next person.
But is it couples and married people or people in relationships that go on the show, or is it singles?
No. So we have singles who are there to obviously date the couples.
Fine.
And those couples can be either married or in long-term relationships.
I see.
Yeah.
But is the idea that you're going to help a relationship that's in trouble by bringing another person into it?
Well, this is the thing. What I've learned and took away from the experience, and I don't want to spoil it, obviously, for the viewers who are watching the rest of the episode.
Of course, and you can catch up on the Channel 4.
Of course, on all 4. But what I took away from is just everybody needs to be on board. That's it. So if you're doing something like this, both parties involved in the relationship need to be on board with the situation.
I see.
Because this is where problems have occurred.
And how can being experimental with sex, bringing in a third partner, other options, how can that help a relationship?
How can it not? Like, I mean,
because I might have to
there's more
explain
body
this.
parts, there's
I'm
more
gonna have a very,
love, there's more passion.
I'm going to have a long sit down with Mrs. Dolan tomorrow.
I bet, right? I mean, it's just basically having the opportunity to have someone else who is also passionate about the person that you're with and so forth, and you share that experience. And I don't see anything wrong with that. It's been going on for years.
Right.
Unlike some people who actually have watched in the US have said, I mean, this has been a long-term thing that's happened. It's not a new trend.
And one of these themes, we would call it a threesome, I guess, in its basic.
I don't like to label stuff. I feel like everybody's just having fun. We're not on Twitter they were saying that it's like some sort of orgy. It's not an orgy. Everybody involved is in relationships and we're dating and we just see where it goes.
I see. Now, why did you decide to participate in this show?
Well, one of the things for me was that I was in a long-term marriage. I was married before and it didn't work out for me. And the reason one of the main reasons in our relationship that broke down was the fact that the lacking of sex was there. Like, obviously, he wanted certain things and I wanted certain things, and it just didn't work out. And
so the compatibility sexually wasn't there. You had different aspirations.
We certainly did, yes.
Yeah.
I mean, he would basically like to live life without having sex and just be kind of roommates. Right. And I am a very sexually active person who wants to experience and have fun.
Yeah.
So those two people coming together is basically incompatible.
What's he going to get up to now? Do you think he may?
He's probably on the internet watching all the episodes at this point.
Perhaps he might like to enter the priesthood.
I mean, bless him, I don't know. He's in the US, he's an American, so...
Yeah, and what about, look, I understand that you're really open-minded about your sex life.
Yes,
and,
I am.
And,
and I think women should. All women should be.
And not be embarrassed about it or any
shouldn't be
sense
embarrassed,
of shame.
shouldn't be ashamed, shouldn't be shy, shouldn't be just like... You should be able to express yourself in a respectful manner and not feel like, oh, because I'm a woman, I'm not supposed to be liberated in having sex or enjoying sex or knowing what pleasure is. Because, I mean, there's plenty of women out there that have had sex their entire lives and never had an orgasm.
Yeah, I've never.
I
met
mean,
one of those.
like, let's get it. You know, that's realistic. There is women who are having sex on a regular basis with their partner, with their husbands, with their boyfriends, and they've never had an orgasm. Yeah. So something's wrong. We need to obviously be liberated as women.
And also, there's a wrong depiction of women in society that somehow women are these sort of blushing virgins and it's the men who are randy and want sex all the time. That's just not true.
It's not true. Women want to have sex. We just want it in a certain way that makes us feel loved and appreciated. We don't want to feel used. That's the purpose. But we still love having sex. We love experiencing new things and trying new things. But there's just a different interpretation between male and female. And it's more of an emotional connection. But we still love having loads of sex. We'll have random sex wherever, but we still have to have that emotional connection. With men, they can just randomly do whatever. That's just how we're made.
It's more of a transaction for men, slightly.
Yeah, kind of. It's just more like, okay, once I've come, okay, it's bedtime. And women are like, okay, well, you know, what's there for me? You know, are we going to cuddle? Are we going to kiss? Are we going to hug? There's that emotional connection to having sex as well.
And how did you feel about showing this side of yourself on national television in front of millions of viewers?
I don't think I thought it through, to be honest. I mean, obviously you don't, you know, when you do something like this as a reality television show, you're part of something new because it's never been done before, and you're not like aware of what's going to happen, and it's just kind of like blown up. I mean, it's like.
And what are the dynamics at play if there's a couple and then you join that couple as the third playmate?
Right.
Does it always go according to plan? Are there pitfalls? What's the etiquette?
I mean, you just go whatever, you know, the other person is feeling. You're emotionally connected. You go with the flow. You see.
But is it like being in a supermarket queue? Do you kind of go, no, you go first. You've got 6 items in your basket.
No, you don't do that. I mean, it's just like you're in the situation. You can kind of sense who is going where, and you just go with it. There's no go here, the directions there, do this and do that. It's just not. It just doesn't work that way. I mean, you don't do that with one-on-one. So why would you do it with an extra?
It's more. It's intuitive, right?
Yes, it's just kind of like
you don't need a manual.
You don't need a manual and directions. You know what you're doing.
I'll be honest with you. We have laminated instructions at home, but each to their own, I guess. And diagrams.
Bless you.
And a slideshow. But no, what I should say is...
And arrows directing towards the... Yeah. Okay.
That's exactly... A lot of arrows. But, I mean, it obviously is a fascinating conversation. The big question is whether Britain is now too sex-obsessed. You can find not just love on your smartphone, but sex itself,
course,
right? You go online and it's very clear. There's no airs and graces about it. I'm going to meet someone, we're going to hook up for one reason.
Yeah.
Is that a negative for society, the commodification of sex, compared to back in the day when you know, my parents' generation, they'd meet each other in a dance hall, and they'd step out with each other for a few months or years, and then on the wedding night, all hell would break loose.
Well, I don't know about wedding night, but I mean, obviously they meet in different circumstances. Technology wasn't around then.
But is this better?
I would say it is better.
All this sleeping around, polygamy.
Well, listen, there is plenty of people in this world, in this society that we live in, that live in homes together and are married long-term and have no sex. They lay next to each other every day and they don't touch each other. And is that something that we should be considering is something we want to carry on for generations to come? No. Our grandparents stayed together because they didn't have those apps that are available now. They stayed together because they thought it was the best thing for their family, it's the best thing for financial reasons. But did they really love each other? Were they getting regular sex? Was there passion in their relationship? That's a question.
It's a fascinating question. Well, let's bring my very highly sexed panel in on this discussion. It's one of the reasons why we handpicked this group tonight, because they've been around the block, let me tell you. Broadcaster and journalist Mike Parry, entrepreneur and presenter and, of course, lawyer Rebecca Jane, and Olympic legend Chris Akabusi. Rebecca Jane, is Britain too obsessed with sex?
No, I don't think we are. I actually think we're quite a prudish nation. And I don't think that this is stuff that we readily talk about, so I don't think that we can be obsessed with it. But, you know, I'm absolutely dying to see what my favourite dinosaur to the right of me thinks.
Well, By the way, Rebecca, are you flirting with Mike Parry? I think you might be.
I think she is. I think she is more.
Who wouldn't?
I've got one view which I can prove, and that is that, and this will offend 90% of people watching, because 90% of people are married. But when you get married...
90% of people are married?
Yeah, sex ceases to exist in the form that you like it, if you see what I mean. Because... the modern age is that we've got access to, all sorts of areas of, exciting physical relationships and all that, which never happened 30 or 40 years ago. Mark, you talked about your parents meeting in a dance hall and all that. The thing is, I know that when people get married, the sex factor changes absolutely remarkably within that relationship. And the reason I know that is because I've never actually been married, but I've had lots of flings with women who are married because they discovered they weren't getting enough sex in their marriage and wanted something exciting to happen, and therefore a late night fling, night in a hotel, dinner, over, candlelit table and all that, and then, a little bit of horizontal refreshment afterwards and all that kind of stuff, you know what I mean? I know that goes on all over the place. That, to me, is proof that there is a suppressed feeling about how much sex people want because they don't want to discuss that with their partner and they don't want to discuss it with their friends in case, as Precious has just stated, you're thought to be a bit of a sex maniac or somebody whose moral stance is down there if you talk about wanting more physical relationships.
So the nation's living in denial.
I think the nation is living in denial. Or it might be, Mark, that I'm just terribly attractive to women and they pick on me to try and help them with the sexual frustration they're suffering.
Well, you are, of course, the king of horizontal refreshment, Mike Parry. And clearly, half the audience watching this show probably know you intimately well. Chris Akabusi, is marriage a trap? Are people wanting more sex than they're actually getting?
So, different strokes for different folks. I think Mike is talking about his own experiences, but love and relationships come in different shapes and sizes, and physical activity is not the be-all and the end-all of all relationships. Some people like quality time together, just the fact that they are very friends and on a collaboration, or they love the giving that they do, or the service that they do for each other. When I say service, I'm talking about I go to work and I earn the money and I'm the house husband and I stay at home and look after the kids, whatever it is. So there's different ways of doing it. I think listening to the piece earlier on with Precious, I would love to have been in Precious' world when I was 21. I would have had a great time. I'd have been straight over there, that's for sure, no doubt about that. But I think that once you do get married, and I'm certainly no prude, and I've had my experiences similar to Mike, but I do think that it can be very, very dangerous. That moment of expression with your partner in Precious's house. All of a sudden, I'm looking at some guy who's doing something a little bit better than I'm doing. I will never forget that image. Never, ever, ever. And she can tell me how much she loves me, and it was just that thing. I'm not having it. And I could imagine that somewhere down the road, our relationship becomes Pete Tong. So I'll be very careful of that one. It sounds great in the moment, but I think there's going to be a lifetime of frustration and separation.
So briefly, Precious, how sustainable is this rather exotic lifestyle? I mean, perhaps you can do it now. You're a very young woman in your prime, a very beautiful lady, of course, and a big hit on this new show. But will you still be doing this into middle age?
I mean, I feel like relationships are for basically what you make it. And at the end of the day, like the panel said, I mean, you have to make those decisions. From the beginning, do not go into something like this and think, OK, let's wing it and just go with it. You have to say, this is what I'm comfortable with, this is where I want to go with it, this is how far I'm going to take it. Once you've got those rules and things in place, everything goes and it flows. There's also a consideration of, do you want to be with two men? Do you want to be with two women? Just like you said, obviously if you're going to be jealous, you're not going to necessarily want to see another man sleep with your wife. And that's the kind of things that you have to discuss. Yeah. I mean, at the end of the day, these things have to be spoken about. adults have to communicate. Communication is key. And then once you've got that out the way, then you can actually have some fun.
There you go. And I think what we're learning from this, Precious, is to have an open mind. And that's, of course, similar to the name of the show, because the show is on Channel 4. It's a big hit.
Yes.
You can catch up on missed episodes on All 4, which is their excellent catch-up service. And you can see the show on Channel 4. It's called The Open House, The Sex Experiment. It stars Precious Muir, who's also available on Twitter at Precious Muir and preciousmuir.com. Precious, come and see us again soon, and thanks for joining us on GB News. Next up, we're gonna have a bit of a tonal change in gear with a simple question: is Rishi Sunak too rich to be Prime Minister? See you shortly.
Europe is in the grip of the most devastating humanitarian crisis since World War II.
The people of Ukraine are facing unimaginable suffering
as their homes are destroyed and their loved ones are killed.
Millions of people are being forced to flee for their lives, carrying only their children, their pets, and the clothes on their back.
The pain, loss and destruction grows by the day.
The people of Ukraine urgently need our help.
Already a vast humanitarian operation is underway. Britain's Disasters Emergency Committee, or DEC, brings together 15 leading aid charities to respond to overseas disasters quickly and efficiently. These charities include the British Red Cross, CARE, Oxfam, Save the Children, and World Vision.
Their teams are working on the ground in Ukraine and neighbouring countries to bring vital aid to those who need it most. If you can spare it, your gift to the DEC's humanitarian appeal will go a really long way.
£10 provides essential hygiene supplies for a person for a month.
£50 provides blankets for 4 families.
£100 provides emergency food for 2 families per month.
It's easy to give. You can donate online at dec.org.uk or call the 24-hour donation line on 0370 60 60 900. If you prefer to send a cheque, please post it to the Ukraine Humanitarian Appeal, PO Box 999, London, EC 3A 3AA. To give £10 on your mobile, simply text the word crisis to 70150. Standard network charges apply for calls, and you must be 16 or over. Texts are charged at the standard network rate, and your £10 donation will be added to your bill.
100% of your donation goes directly to the DEC to save lives and deliver critical support where it's needed.
Is Britain too obsessed with sex? This from Jamie. Yes, Mark, we have a very unhealthy obsession with sex. Our slip into immoral pushing of boundaries is the devil's seduction of man. Strong views on that one. How about this from Michael? Dear Mark, if women require emotional connections, as just described, what makes females prostitutes? Well, there's a brain teaser of a question. And Roy says, hi Mark, sex is the oldest industry in the world. Always has been, always will be. Nothing new here. And finally, Hugh says, dear Mark, who appointed Precious as the shag police? And can Porky remember the last time he had horizontal refreshment? I've got no doubt it was minutes before his appearance on this show, if I know Mike Parry.
A gentleman never reveals these sort of things.
I'm glad to hear it. Spare us the details. Let's crack on with our news agenda, looking at the big stories of the day in the company of my fabulous panel, Rebecca Jane, Chris Akabusi and Mike Porky Parry. Let's get to this story, and of course it's one of the big political stories of the week. Rishi Sunak was once seen by many as the good guy of British politics during the pandemic, of course. He was a Teflon politician, with some tipping him for number 10. Yet, in a matter of weeks, his popularity for Britain's top job has plummeted. Once hailed as the biggest threat to the current Prime Minister Boris Johnson's term, Sunak is now in the eye of many storms. There are multiple newspaper reports on Sunak and his billionaire wife, Akshata Murthy's private wealth. Sunak himself reportedly owns a £10 million property portfolio in his constituency of Richmond, North Yorkshire, with a £1.5 million Georgian manor in Yorkshire across 12 acres, including, wait for it, an ornamental lake. His wife, Akshata, daughter of one of India's richest men, has a personal fortune estimated to be around £300 million. That's about the same amount of cash as Mick Jagger. All of this wealth makes him one of the richest men in Britain. But is it right for a Member of Parliament to have that much money? Or does it make him out of touch with the voter? Is Rishi Sunak too rich to be Prime Minister? Mike Parry.
Well, I think there's some wealth envy in this story, OK? When you say, is he too rich to be Prime Minister, we want very successful people to run this country. And Rishi Sunak is very successful. He's successful in his own right in business. He worked in America and he worked in the City of London and created a substantial fortune. He was then very successful at picking a mate in life. He picked the daughter of a billionaire. His father-in-law owns ISIS, doesn't he? The massive international information company.
Right.
And is a billionaire.
And a software guru and all the rest of it.
Software guru and all that kind of stuff. He's also been a very successful politician. He was Chancellor before he was 40. He was 39 years of age. And the reason he became Chancellor was he'd been so impressive in what he'd done when he first came into Parliament. I think he was only there 6 years, and he'd obviously made his mark early on because he's very bright up here. Now, the situation regarding his wife, he didn't handle well. But the critical factor here is that you cannot have dual nationality between India and the United Kingdom. You can between the United Kingdom and the United States. You can between Australia and the United Kingdom. You can have dual nationality. You can hold two passports. But you can't if you're Indian. That's a strict rule within India. So she would have to have given up her Indian nationality if she had not opted for non-dom status. She's still a non-dom, by the way, but she's now agreed to pay up to £3 million a year on the earnings she gets from the dividends in her father's
So she stays
company.
non-dom, but she skips the financial perks.
Absolutely right. Absolutely right. That's what she's done voluntarily. So, I'm not attacking Rishi Sunak saying he's hidden things and all that. You've got to remember that one of the reasons this country does so well financially is that we're very attractive to rich people. That's why so many Russians came here, because they know our banks are safe. Their money won't get stolen like it gets stolen in Russia. But also people from India, from the Middle East, they come here because they know we are fiscally a great country. And every country in the world is competing to attract wealth and attract wealthy people. And to do that, you have to have a sensible and realistic tax structure.
Well, an attractive one.
Yeah, an attractive one.
Say it, Mike.
An attractive one.
We want these people to spend their money here.
Of course we do. If people come here and invest billions, literally billions...
And buy Rolls-Royces and Lamborghinis.
And buy huge houses and send their children to our best private schools, paying lots and lots of money, then we want to attract them and bring them here. The only way you attract them is to make sure they don't get penalised for their wealth, because if they do, they'll go to another country. So I'm not against Rishi Sunak on this. I think he should have handled it better in the way it was unveiled.
Correct.
But I am not against the actual position of him and his wife, and I don't think he's too rich to be Prime Minister, although I think he's made other mistakes.
Rebecca Jane, is Rishi Sunak too rich to be Prime Minister?
I'm a little on the fence, which I'm not usually, but I feel like I am.
Can we get you like a paracetamol or something? Maybe smelling salts. Get Precious back in, shall we?
For goodness sakes, I don't know what's happened. It's so difficult for me because I really like him. And I thought he'd be a really good choice, actually, instead of Boris, because, I'm no fan of Boris in the slightest. However, I kind of, do feel like he is a little bit too rich to
But who
be
cares
Prime
if
Minister.
he's the best person to do the job?
Here's why I care. I do think he would do a very good job. However, I think that our whole Conservative government is a little bit out of touch with the general working class person. And I feel like if we continue with him taking over, we will continue down that path. I feel like we need a bit of a
Red Wall?
Hang on a second. I feel like we need a little dose of reality. And I feel like these people need to actually, Edwina Currie, she needs to come to Burnley. She needs to see how people
Reality
actually
and
live.
perhaps empathy as well.
Yeah, just a little bit of understanding. Go and live their lives. He hasn't lived their lives. He doesn't know how hard it is. He doesn't know how difficult it is to choose between heating or eating. Go and give it a bash, and then maybe let's talk about him being Prime Minister.
Chris Akabusi, you're a very successful and in-demand motivational speaker. you'll be inspiring many of your audiences to achieve what Rishi Sunak has achieved. This guy was not born with a silver spoon in his mouth. His mother was a pharmacist. His dad was a GP, and he made millions in the city. It's a coincidence that his missus is a billionaire. But what's the problem with Rishi Sunak's success?
No, I've got a problem with his success at all. And he's not too rich, as far as I'm concerned, to be Prime Minister. And I mean, I think perennially anyway, that lots of incumbents at number 10, right from the beginning, have had lots of money. No, he's not too rich, he's too green to be Prime Minister. The fact that this has caught him unawares and that he's bristled and he thinks it's unfair. No, Mr Sunak, the people who are competing against you are on manoeuvres, and you need to get on the manoeuvres too.
Yeah.
He should have seen this coming and headed off at the pass.
Bit wet behind the ears, but I personally don't think it's game over for Rishi, but I do think he's on the ropes. What do you think? Mark at gbnews.uk. Is Rishi Sunak too rich to be Prime Minister? Really excited about my Mark Meets guest. He has compiled a book all about the journalists who reported the troubles in Northern Ireland, plus alternative news headlines, Kinsey Schofield live from America with Showbiz, and more Mike Parry. See you shortly.
Europe is in the grip of the most devastating humanitarian crisis since World War II.
The people of Ukraine are facing unimaginable suffering
as their homes are destroyed and their loved ones are killed.
Millions of people are being forced to flee for their lives, carrying only their children, their pets, and the clothes on their back.
The pain, loss and destruction grows by the day.
The people of Ukraine urgently need our help.
Already a vast humanitarian operation is underway. Britain's Disasters Emergency Committee, or DEC, brings together 15 leading aid charities to respond to overseas disasters quickly and efficiently. These charities include the British Red Cross, CARE, Oxfam, Save the Children, and World Vision.
Their teams are working on the ground in Ukraine and neighbouring countries to bring vital aid to those who need it most. If you can spare it, your gift to the DEC's humanitarian appeal will go a really long way.
£10 provides essential hygiene supplies for a person for a month.
£50 provides blankets for 4 families.
£100 provides emergency food for 2 families per month.
It's easy to give. You can donate online at dec.org.uk or call the 24-hour donation line on 0370 60 60 900. If you prefer to send a cheque, please post it to the Ukraine Humanitarian Appeal, PO Box 999, London, EC 3A 3AA. To give £10 on your mobile, simply text the word crisis to 70150. Standard network charges apply for calls, and you must be 16 or over. Texts are charged at the standard network rate, and your £10 donation will be added to your bill.
100% of your donation goes directly to the DEC to save lives and deliver critical support where it's needed.
Lots of emails coming in about whether Britain is too obsessed with sex. How about this from Rachel? Good evening, Mark. What a great discussion about sex on your show tonight. There are many ways to peel a grape. It may be a cliche, but communication is key and variety is the spice of life. Personally, I run a mile from those dating sites. It's nice when reality is better than your imagination. The young people seem to have it nailed. Good luck to Precious. I hope she finds someone compatible for her. Now, where is that vibrator? Hello! What a grown-up conversation. Rachel, thank you for that. An interesting email. Do keep them coming in. In the news agenda later in this hour, we'll have a look at several important questions. There's a new anti-aging treatment, but has science gone too far? And do we really want to live forever? That's going to be one of our big questions. Also, the Beckham son, Brooklyn Beckham, is getting married as we speak in a multi-million-dollar wedding in the States. Are posh showbiz weddings over the top? Are they immoral? We'll discuss that in our alternative news agenda. We also will play another game show as well. So much to get through. Plus, my Mark Meets guest is the author and compiler of this fascinating new book about reporting the troubles in Northern Ireland. Such a busy hour to come. First up, here's Bethany with the headlines.
Thanks, Mark. I am Bethany Elsey in the GB newsroom. Boris Johnson has pledged economic and defensive military help to Ukraine following face-to-face talks with President Volodymyr Zelensky in Kiev. The Prime Minister said he made his surprise visit to the capital as a show of solidarity for Ukraine. Britain has agreed to send 120 armoured vehicles and new anti-ship missile systems in support. Boris Johnson says with allies, the UK will continue to intensify sanctions on Russia.
Together with friends and partners, we, the UK and others, supply the equipment, the technology, the know-how, the intelligence, so that Ukraine will never be invaded again.
President Volodymyr Zelensky thanked the UK for its support and described Boris Johnson as one of the most principled opponents against Russia's invasion. Speaking at the joint press conference, President Zelensky called for further sanctions on all Russian banks and for an embargo on oil. He also urged other Western countries to do everything to hold Russian soldiers and their commanders accountable for their crimes.
I'm grateful to the United Kingdom that continues and intensifies the sanctions and also provides a significant support of Ukraine by reinforcing our defence capacities. Other democratic Western countries should follow the example of the UK. It's time to impose a complete embargo on Russian energy resources, and they should increase the amount of weapons being supplied.
And some news in the last half an hour. The Prime Minister of Pakistan, Imran Khan, has lost a no-confidence vote. The country's parliament has voted in favour of removing him from office after a 14-hour-long standoff between the opposition and Khan's ruling party. Speaking before the vote, Khan defiantly rejected calls for him to resign and accused a Western country of a conspiracy to oust him because he visited Vladimir Putin in Moscow recently. In other news, the royal family has released a poetic tribute to mark the first anniversary of the Duke of Edinburgh's death. The poem, written by the poet laureate Simon Armitage, is called The Patriarchs, an elegy. He died on this day last year at the Windsor Castle, just months short of his 100th birthday.
Husbands to duty, they unrolled their plans across billiard tables and vehicle bonnets, regrouped at breakfast. What their secrets were was everyone's guess and nobody's business. Great-grandfathers from birth, in time they became both inner core and outer case in a family heirloom of nesting dolls.
And against the odds at 50-1, Noble Yeats has won this year's Grand National at Aintree. Trained by Emmett Mullins, the 7-year-old horse beat 15-2 favourite Any Second Now by 2 1/4 lengths. Delta Work was third. The jockey Sam Whaley-Cohen described his win as a fairy tale. On TV, online and DAB plus radio, this is GB News. Now it's back to Mark.
It's time now for my alternative news headlines, and we bring you the news that the Hollywood actor Will Smith has been banned from attending the Oscars for 10 years for slapping comedian Chris Rock at the ceremony. His furious wife, Jada Pinkett Smith, is said to be tearing her hair out. Well, 10 years is a long time to be away, so what could Will Smith do? Well, he could probably make one Avatar movie with James Cameron or 10 Fast and Furiouses. But there must be so many other options. Well, it got us to thinking here on Mark Dolan tonight of other films that Will Smith could make in the next 10 years during his absence from the Oscars. How about Men in Slap? You know they're coming. What about Slappy Feet? Slapless in Seattle? There you go. That's got to be a romantic comedy to end all romantic comedies. Last but not least, Slap Me If You Can. Brilliant work from our art department. Meanwhile, tennis legend Boris Becker faces jail after being found guilty of hiding millions of pounds worth of assets to avoid paying his debts. Becker done for fraud? What a racket. If this tennis ace does go to prison, he's been advised against saying "new balls, please." Be careful what you wish for. He's also quickly going to learn that the terms backhand, stroke, service box and playing on grass are a very different thing inside. Mixed doubles, anyone? Straight sets? Medical news now, and this one's a corker. Men who regularly use erectile dysfunction medication face an 85% chance of increased risk of developing vision problems. That's right, they develop vision problems. I've got the study here. It goes on to say 30% of... Is that 40%? I can't read any of that. Meanwhile, legendary rock band Pink Floyd are to reform. The 70s rock icons are going to get together to raise money for Ukraine. Good on them. What a fantastic gesture. Well, here tonight on Mark Dolan tonight, we've gained exclusive access to their show rider, what they've asked for backstage. And here it is. They've asked for a walk-in bath. Makes perfect sense. A single large slipper. Oh, so comfortable. A family pack of soft mints. Mrs. Brown's Boys on DVD for a bit of a laugh. And last but not least, pressure stockings. Oh, under pressure. You're so vain, hot legs. And those are your alternative news headlines. It's time now for Mark Meets, in which I speak to the biggest names in the world of politics, sport, journalism and showbiz, as well as those who simply have a big story to tell. The Troubles in Northern Ireland saw a tragic loss of life on both sides, not just for those at war, but innocent civilians too. However, the brave journalists reporting the conflict in Northern Ireland faced just as much peril. And a brand new book about the dangers of reporting the Troubles and what these journalists went through is out now. It's the sequel to the best-selling Reporting the Troubles, and it's called Reporting the Troubles 2. There's a screenshot of the book itself. It's already a bestseller. Compiled by highly respected journalist Derek Henderson, with forwards by the former Irish Taoiseach Bertie Ahern and former British Prime Minister Tony Blair, and with another valuable contribution from our very own panellist tonight, Mike Parry, who wrote a chapter, I'm delighted to say, that alongside Mike, Derek Henderson, co-author of this fascinating book, joins me now. Hi, Derek.
Good evening, Mark. How are you?
I'm very well. It's a privilege to have you on the show. Journalists face just as much peril as soldiers in a war setting, don't they?
Not quite, but there have been incidents where we have been under threat. I mean, I remember specifically in 1988 in Milltown Cemetery, the funerals of 3 IRA members who were shot dead by the SAS in Gibraltar, and the funerals were attacked by a loyalist, Michael Stone. That's probably as close as I've ever come to being injured or under threat. But I don't think, the Troubles or the reporters had a front seat view of what was happening here, but in terms of their threat to their lives, it wasn't anything like faced the police and army and other people. But I think, unlike most trouble situations, I think journalists here have got away relatively quietly and without any great drama. One or two, obviously, were threatened. One or two had to leave Belfast during the worst of the Troubles. But by and large, I think journalists were left alone to get on with the job.
Oh, well, I'm glad to hear that. Why is journalism so important during a war?
Well, you can see it happening at the moment in Ukraine. Belfast wasn't anything on the same scale as it is over in that part of Europe. But journalism have a very important part to play in covering any war. It's not the first script of history. They're there to see, they're there to observe, they're there to report. as impartially as they can, without favour or bias. I know it's very difficult at the moment for those journalists who are in the Ukraine at the moment, and who are doing heroic work under very difficult and trying circumstances. It wasn't quite that bad in Belfast, but we, as I said, we had a front seat view of what was happening over here, and it was our job, as to say, to report impartially and fairly and accurately.
Well, the second volume of Reporting the Troubles is out now, with a foreword by the former Irish Taoiseach Bertie Ahern and former British Prime Minister Tony Blair. What are some of the stories that stand out from this book as you compiled it, Derek?
Well, I mean, it's to say we wrote the first book in 2018 with 70 journalists from Belfast, London and Dublin who worked here during the height of the Troubles. Ivan and Little and myself decided we'd do a second volume. Again, 70 more journalists telling their stories, reflecting on their times working here during the worst of the Troubles. And you have to remember, I mean, there was hundreds and hundreds of journalists passed through here during those days. And some of them, it left a huge impression on them. I think that many of them felt, when we asked them if they would like to contribute to the book, all of them, without exception, agreed. They said it was a cathartic in many ways. It helped them to sort of, get over what had happened here. They reported, for years and years, but they never really told their own stories. And there's been some incredible pieces of work in this book. Journalists who really, looking back on what happened here, looking back on their times here, how difficult it was for them, how awkward it was for them, the impact it had on their family lives and home lives. A lot of the guys come over from London, including Mike Parry, who's sitting in your studio. And, it could have been, and it was very, very difficult and very challenging and very demanding.
What did they go through, Derek? Can you explain the challenges of reporting in the field? I'm glad that you've clarified, actually, both sides pretty much let the journalists get on with their work. I mean, of course, they would have faced some peril as civilians did. But what sort of challenges did they go through? Notwithstanding the mental trauma of being in such a dangerous and violent setting. But on a personal note, what did they go through?
Well, I mean, Belfast, covering the Northern Ireland story was very difficult. It was very complex. Even those of us who live and work here, and who grew up here, found it difficult. And I think the important thing was to be as neutral as possible, and that wasn't always easy, especially in the run-up to the signing of the Good Friday Agreement in 1998. There was pressures from all sides, pressures from political parties on journalists, pressures from the security forces on journalists, pressures on the paramilitaries, Republican and Loyalist. You were under considerable pressure from them, but it's basically was withstanding that, holding up to that, setting your face against all of that, and I think by and large, the journalists who worked here, who found it very difficult, especially visiting journalists, did a remarkably good job. I mean, there was very few that let it run away with themselves. They did the best under very trying circumstances, and I think most of the people, and especially those people who've contributed to this book and to the previous book, can look back on themselves with a certain amount of pride in what they did and what they achieved.
And clearly they entered, dangerous territory in Northern Ireland. They faced, obviously, some degree of peril in that context. Did they have to get to know these different groups? Would they go to bars and hang out with these people? Is that where they got the story?
Well, it's like any job in journalism. You're only as good as the people you know. And that took you to all sorts of places that weren't particularly nice, but you had to go there. And if that meant meeting paramilitary groups, individuals, people that you probably didn't particularly like, people that you certainly didn't share their views, but it was part of the job, and you had to go to places that that were awkward, were difficult, but you had to meet these people. And as I say, you're only as good as the people you knew. And,
Derek, where would those places be when you talk about sort of an awkward place to go to meet someone from a paramilitary organisation? Would that be a sort of a hideout somewhere, a secret location?
Yes, it was. Yes, invariably it was. And you mean you didn't always have to go on your own. There were colleagues from other organisations who went with you. These were always pre-arranged, and you didn't go unless you were satisfied that the people you were going to see weren't going to cause you any harm or cause any offence. And by and large, it was all fairly civilised. And yes, there was fear and trepidation at some stages, but you were basically let get on with the job.
Well, that's obviously a rare positive in what was decades of bloody and tragic conflict. Derek, you mentioned Mike Parry, of course, radio broadcaster and a legend of Fleet Street journalism. Mike Parry, you've contributed a chapter to Reporting the Troubles too.
Yeah.
Tell me about that chapter.
Yeah, my chapter was about the death of Lord Mountbatten. Just before we go any further, Mark, can I just point out that Derek has not really explained the nature of what he did over about 35 years. Now, I would have been described as a visiting fireman. I was based in Manchester when I first went there, then London, sometimes in Birmingham. I was in and I was out again. I didn't then have to worry about the consequences of a lot of my reporting because not everybody was happy with what you wrote. Both sides in the sectarian war were very good at PR, so they knew it wasn't a good idea to sort of, hurt, injure or even intimidate journalists, but nevertheless, you had to be very, very careful what you did. I was so young, I used to do things like jump in a car and drive to Crossmaglen because Crossmaglen was the terrorist capital of Europe. And I only didn't get into Crossmaglen one night when I stopped by an army patrol on the road into Crossmaglen and warned by the soldiers who stopped me at gunpoint, did you know what you're doing? Why are you here? We advise you to turn around and go away. They were worried I was going to cause problems that they were going to have to clear up, On another time, Derek, I went up to Dundalk to meet a guy, was his name Patsy McArdle, who was somebody we knew in the border area, and we were supposed to meet him in a bar, but we got warned off as we parked the car in the street by a lot of, very unpleasant-looking people carrying iron bars and that kind of stuff. So it was there all the time. But again, can I say, I was visiting fireman. At least two guys I know of who I worked with never went back to Ireland again after striking up friendships with girls in Belfast. There was a very strangely named disco in the top of the Europa Hotel called the Copacabana, believe it or not. Well, it's least likely the Copacabana in the middle of Belfast during the Troubles than anywhere else in the world. But they met girls there and they were run out of town, literally, because those girls' fathers had some sort of active operation on what was going on there, and they were warned, A, you never see her again, B, you never come back. So it was that kind of thing. But again, I have to stress, Derek had to live through all that. Derek had to wake up with the consequences of what he'd filed in the papers in the town where he lived. By that time, I might have been on a plane and gone back. Now, on Mountbatten, I was very lucky, if you say lucky, I was working on the Birmingham Evening Mail on a bank holiday, and I was the last person left in the office after everybody had gone home, 4 o'clock in the afternoon, and it came through on the tapes, the Press Association, which Derek worked for and became the editor of in a very distinguished manner. And it said that Lord Mountbatten's boat had been subject to an explosion off the Irish coast. And a few minutes later, it confirmed that Mountbatten was dead and, unfortunately, 3 or 4 other people on the boat. And I just literally went. I was so young and so enthusiastic. I got out to Birmingham Airport. Believe it or not, there was a plane to Dublin, got over there, managed to pick up a hire car through deceiving the people at Avis about who I was, and shot off to the other side, Sligo and Mullaghmore, where it took place. And then I didn't sleep for 6 days, really, because when you're young, you're on a story like that, and it's so huge, and you're working on a paper. I was working for the Birmingham Evening Mail, 6 different editions a day. It just never stopped. But the adrenaline ran, and Derek, I think, will explain to you, adrenaline was something you needed in bucket loads to work in Northern Ireland, to work in Belfast, because you literally never knew what was going to happen next. I also worked there during the hunger strikes, and you knew when the next hunger striker had died, because The women in a place called the Divies Flats behind the Europa Hotel would come out in the middle of the night and start banging the pavement with dustbin lids. That was the Bush Telegraph. They knew, even before the authorities knew, that another hunger striker died. And it was that sort of anything could happen at any moment which dominated life when you worked in Northern Ireland.
And briefly, Mike Parry, it surprised me to hear that these paramilitary organisations made up of very often murderous men, gangsters, if you like, whose values and views we don't share, that they weren't tempted to threaten journalists in any way. I mean, I'm glad to hear that. But did you experience that too, that these organisations understood that you were not the enemy and that you had a job to do?
Well, look, I'd like Derek to answer that more full than me, but can I just say about Ukraine, the reason the journalists are there is to get the truth. In Northern Ireland, it was like the other way around. There was a lot of propaganda being fed to you all the time, and then journalists picked it up. But Derek knew a lot more about that than me.
Derek, on that sort of the mental challenge of reporting for decades in such a war-torn area, all the anguish, did you have trouble leaving these issues behind you when you came home at night?
Absolutely. I mean, I remember in 1988, I was married with 2 young boys. I left the house one morning and didn't come home for 3 weeks. And that's the way it was. I mean, the job here was 24/7. The phones never stopped. You were on the go continually. It didn't make for a great home life, I have to say, at times. You know, journalists were married to, you know, very tolerant partners because they were never there. The job was everything. The job came first. And, you know, during the worst of the troubles, you know, especially post the hunger strikes of 1981, post the Anglo-Irish Agreement of 1985, right up through to the whole peace process which led towards the signing of the Good Friday Agreement in 1998, journalists were on the go non-stop. And that's what it was like here. It was very, very, very intense. And we thought that after the signing of the Good Friday Agreement, things would improve. And yes, they did. Belfast today is a much better place than it was back in the days when Mike Parry used to come and see us. It's a great city. We're in a good place. But regrettably, we're not in as good a place as we should be. Yeah. And that, I think, is unfortunate. But compared to what it was in the early 70s and the mid-80s, Belfast, by and large, is at peace with itself. It's a great city. There's some fantastic people here doing great work. But as I say, the politics just haven't kicked in as well as we'd hoped. And although we're in a good place, I just wish we were in a much, much better place. We're not there.
Well, that's right. The people of Northern Ireland deserve better. Derek, any regrets devoting so much of your life and your career to the Troubles in Northern Ireland? Would you do it all again?
Well, do I have any regrets? I don't have any regrets. I mean, you know, journalists back then, and Mike Parry will confirm this, you know, we had the best of times. The job has changed completely now. We are in a different place, a different landscape, but regrets, absolutely none. Would I do it over again? I wouldn't want to go through what I went through back in those days, but I mean, journalism is a great profession. It remains a great profession, but it's a completely different landscape now to what I used to work in, especially with social media and so on. And when I came to Belfast in 1973, the Belfast Telegraph were selling something like 225,000 copies a day. Now they'd be lucky if they were selling 25,000 copies, and that's just the way things are. It's a pity, but to say we had the best of times, I think.
Well, Derek, it's a remarkable legacy that you have in journalism. The book is compiled by yourself and Ivan Little. You've done an amazing job. The book is called Reporting the Troubles. Thank you, Tatiana. There's the screenshot of the book. More journalists tell their stories of the Northern Ireland conflict. It's a fascinating read and an important read as well. My sincere thanks to its co-compiler, Derek Henderson, and contributor to the book, Mike Parry. Lots more to come after this. US Showbiz News with the Queen of American royal and political reporting, Kinsey Schofield. Plus more from my panel as well. Are posh celebrity weddings over the top? Are they immoral? Plus we've got another great British game show and much more besides. I'll see you shortly.
Europe is in the grip of the most devastating humanitarian crisis since World War II.
The people of Ukraine are facing unimaginable suffering
as their homes are destroyed and their loved ones are killed.
Millions of people are being forced to flee for their lives, carrying only their children, their pets, and the clothes on their back.
The pain, loss and destruction grows by the day.
The people of Ukraine urgently need our help.
Already a vast humanitarian operation is underway. Britain's Disasters Emergency Committee, or DEC, brings together 15 leading aid charities to respond to overseas disasters quickly and efficiently. These charities include the British Red Cross, CARE, Oxfam, Save the Children, and World Vision.
Their teams are working on the ground in Ukraine and neighbouring countries to bring vital aid to those who need it most. If you can spare it, your gift to the DEC's humanitarian appeal will go a really long way.
£10 provides essential hygiene supplies for a person for a month.
£50 provides blankets for 4 families.
£100 provides emergency food for 2 families per month.
It's easy to give. You can donate online at dec.org.uk or call the 24-hour donation line on 0370 60 60 900. If you prefer to send a cheque, please post it to the Ukraine Humanitarian Appeal, PO Box 999, London, EC 3A 3AA. To give £10 on your mobile, simply text the word crisis to 70150. Standard network charges apply for calls and you must be 16 or over. Texts are charged at the standard network rate and your £10 donation will be added to your bill.
100% of your donation goes directly to the DEC to save lives and deliver critical support where it's needed.
Emails coming in across a range of tonight's show topics, including this from Michael, who says, "Hi Mark, great show as usual. No, Rishi Sunak is not too rich to be Prime Minister. However, I do agree with Chris that he's too inexperienced, and I have commented on this previously. In relation to his wife's billions and tax status, I'm of the opinion that they've been treated unfairly. She has every right to her tax status and to maintain her Indian citizenship. On housing, should we build more houses? George has crafted my big opinion monologue into a video which is now available to see on the GBNews Twitter feed. Clive says, Mark, be careful what you wish for. The UK has 60 million acres of land. 6 million is built on. 12 million is non-arable. That leaves 42 million acres. To be self-sufficient, you need 1 acre per person. So the UK population is 67 plus million. So we are 25 million overpopulated. That means we will have to rely on other countries to feed us. Sounds very much like the energy problem. What a thoughtful and well-considered email. Clive in High Wycombe, thank you so much for that. Thanks for your kind words about the show as well. This show is nothing without you. So tell your friends, tell your family, and let's change the world together. It's time now for US News with the Queen of US Showbiz, Royal and Political Reporting, Kinsey Schofield. Hi, Kinsey.
Mark, Clive did a lot of math there. It's going to take me a second.
Yeah, I know. I've had to get my calculator out. I'll be honest with you. I'm just a bimbo. I'm a dumb blonde. I'll let you do the heavy lifting intellectually, Kinsey. And let's start with Will Smith. We've got breaking news, a ban from the Oscars. Tell me more.
Right. The Oscars, I'm actually surprised by this. Banned for a decade, they called his actions against Chris Rock, the slap, unacceptable and harmful. And they admit that they did not adequately address the situation at the event. And why I think he got such a harsh punishment is because he embarrassed them. He embarrassed them intentionally, but also after the fact, the Academy was quick to leak that they asked Will Smith to leave and he refused to do so. And we found out after the fact that that was not true. So I think that they were embarrassed. They were caught in a lie. They were caught with, unacceptable behavior themselves. And this was their way of trying to clean house. And, I actually kind of, I can't believe I'm saying this, but I kind of sympathize with Will Smith in this case. I thought the punishment was kind of harsh.
However, do you think that if he wears this hair shirt for long enough, the American public and the world public will forgive this guy? Is there going to come a point where we start buying tickets for his movies again?
I think so. And I also think that if there's a change in the dynamic with his relationship, I also think that people will be more willing to forgive him, because I think that people recognize that his relationship with Jada is very toxic. I think a lot of people blame Jada for the toxicity. I don't know if you've recently seen the video going around where she starts recording him to promote her Red Table Talk program on Facebook, and he shuts her down and says, "Do not record me in my own house." So I think that if they separated, or if he came out and said that he was in an unhappy marriage, I think people would be really, really quick to take his side.
Yeah, well, I'm afraid I'm sympathetic to that point of view. A far happier relationship is Bennifer. Can you explain what Bennifer is?
Bennifer is the Hollywood nickname for Ben Affleck and Jennifer Lopez. It's almost been 20 years since their original engagement, when she was Jenny from the Block, and he was just not Batman. But I think this is really exciting, and I do love happy endings like this, and I really do hope that they end up together forever, because that would just be the ultimate Hollywood love story. Can't you see the Lifetime movie now? I really do hope that they end up together forever and ever, because this is a unique case where they temporarily separated. They said when they were planning their wedding the first go around, I think that was in 2002, they said that they had hired 3 decoys to pretend to be Jennifer Lopez, and they rented out 3 different venues to throw people off, and they said they were just exhausted and overwhelmed, and they called it off. So I really truly hope that this is they get their happy ending, they end up married, and they spend forever and ever together.
I've got no doubt you've met Ben Affleck. I've had the privilege of interviewing him in Dublin, and he's a very genuine guy. He's, obviously a great-looking guy. He's a fantastic actor, but he's very sincere. I was absolutely charmed by him. However, he's got his demons. So do you think he can resolve those personal issues that he's had with Jennifer? Can she fix Ben?
Wow. I thought you were going to go with the back tattoo, but you went with the demons, and I appreciate that. I do. I think she settles him down. I think she calms him down. And, what I really like is the way that they've mixed their families together. They bought a new house for this mixed family. And I think it's going to be very Brady Bunch. And I think she's going to calm him down and settle his soul.
And it will be the wedding of the year, won't it?
Well, it's going to be no Beckham wedding. I'm sure that one's going to be out of the ballpark.
Listen, of course, that's not really on our list of topics tonight, but you have mentioned it, Kinsey, and I've got no doubt you'll be reporting on it. Brooklyn Beckham, who's the eldest son of David and Victoria Beckham, are marrying a very rich young woman. I think that her father is the owner of Wendy's Burgers and many other businesses. So I think her dad's a billionaire. We know about David and Victoria. Do the American public have any interest in this big wedding between the Beckhams and this rich American family?
100% no. In fact, I'm so tired of seeing this on my feed. I feel like their PR people are being paid overtime right now, and I need a break. There really is no interest in this wedding, and they're even trying to throw in Harry and Meghan to try to force interest in this wedding. So they're like, oh, Harry and Meghan might show up. Oh, is it a slam to Will and Kate? No, we're fine. We're okay if they're not there. We're okay if we don't hear about the wedding. It'll be fine.
It's interesting, isn't it? We're going to be talking about those glitzy weddings very shortly. But before we do that, can you tell me about Jussie Smollett? This is an actor that was in a hit series in the States. I think it was called Empire. But he staged a bizarre fake attack. So can you just tell me the story and what the latest is on this young actor?
This is one of my favorite topics to discuss with you. Jussie Smollett, Empire. Originally, the way that this all started was he sent himself a piece of hate mail. In the mail, he sent it to himself on the set and, reported it to the network. They didn't do anything about it. He was frustrated. So then he staged a hate crime on himself, was supposedly walking to Subway at 2 a.m. in Chicago while it's like 3 below. It's a super freeze, and Jussie Smollett's on the streets of Chicago trying to get a Sandy. Sorry, I have a hard time believing that. But he accused 2 Trump supporters in MAGA hats of putting a noose around his neck and throwing bleach on him. And then it was, it turned out that these were 2 men that he hired that were his personal trainers. And, it's just so much evidence up against this guy. He was found guilty, was supposed to spend some time in jail, but he was let out while his attorneys appeal this decision by the judge. So, we're waiting for the appeals process to start up. Less than 2 weeks, maybe 3 weeks after this guy's released, he drops a rap song where these are some of the lyrics. You think I'm stupid enough to ruin my reputation? Yes. And it's like they're hell-bent on not solving the crime. We solved it. It's been solved. And you've got guilt written all over you. So it's like, read the room. I'm so embarrassed for you, Jussie Smollett. Just take a break.
Too right. Give us all a break, for God's sakes. It's a shocker. But I reckon that the Freak Show, that soap opera, will continue for many months, if not years to come. He's going to go on reality TV. He'll do those singing competitions. You can't get this guy out of your hair, Kinsey.
No, help me. SOS.
Listen, I can't help you because I want to talk further now about the Beckham's wedding. I know you don't care. I know you're furious about it. But let's bring my panel in because I want to have a conversation about whether these posh showbiz weddings are over the top and if they're immoral. So let's get the latest on this. The eldest son of the Beckhams, Brooklyn Beckham, is tying the knot today with model and actress Nicola Peltz. The $3 million ceremony, that's right, $3 million ceremony will be held at the Peltz's family's £76 million, 44,000 square foot oceanfront Miami mansion. I'm sure you've got one of those, Kinsey. It will be a star-studded event with the likes of Gordon Ramsay, Serena Williams, and a potential visit from Harry and Meghan. With the Beckhams' £380 million fortune and Nicola's father, Nelson Peltz, being an investor of Trian Fund Management, said to be worth about $2 billion, well, then $3 million is a bargain for these people. But the question is, what do we think of these posh weddings? Remember Kim Kardashian and Chris Humphries? It was a 72-day marriage, except the wedding cost them $10 million. So what do we think? Kinsey, first of all, is the appetite in America for big weddings as huge as ever, or has the 2-year pandemic and economic hardship raised eyebrows about this kind of extravagance?
Between the pandemic and, just the people suffering all around us, because we are feeling those repercussions. You could talk about this constantly, but, my father-in-law has cancer and he struggled severely because he was not diagnosed because of the pandemic. So I think that people they're upset over the repercussions of lockdown and what all has happened. I'd say the only really glamorous and luxurious weddings that Americans are interested in are royal weddings.
Right. Oh, that's really interesting. Chris Akabusi, do you think it's worth splashing the cash on your wedding?
Well, yeah, I think it's worth splashing the cash on your wedding, and depending upon where you are in a strata of millions, how much you spend on it. If the 10, I think it's Kinsey. It was Kinsey. If the £10 million spending is the bench in that sort of world, this is chicken feed. It's chicken feed. Why are we getting head up about it? I mean, I think what Kinsey said earlier on is, Why are we bothered? Why are we interested? We know that the Beckhams are self-promoters. It seems to be a big promotion exercise. Why are we interested? You know, yes, make these two young people happy. And if $1 million or £1 million does it, fantastic. It's an episodic event. It's a moment they'll remember forever, a bankable memory. Crack on, knock yourself out. But why would we be upset about it? That's their money. Why are we giving oxygen? That's what I would say. It sounds like money. It's a lot of money to me. Might be a lot of money to you. But if 10 million is a benchmark, it's chicken feed in Hollywood.
Rebecca Jane, it sounds like an investment. It's good for your brand, this kind of wedding.
Oh, Brooklyn Beckham needs to drop this trying to have a brand thing because it's just not going to happen for him. His mum and dad have cornered the market and nobody cares. We don't care. I couldn't care less about this wedding. Absolutely correct. The only weddings that we actually really care about are the royal ones. The problem is that nobody is actually giving it oxygen, bar the PR team that is hired to actually try and give it some kind of oxygen. The endless reports on this nonsensical, boring-looking event that's currently going on, couldn't care less.
Mike Porky Parry, you'll, of course, have reported on royal weddings and showbiz weddings over the years for The Express, The Sun and other papers.
Yes.
I mean, OK, respect to Chris and Rebecca who say they're not interested, but I think many are.
Well, I spent a week over in California when Elizabeth Taylor got married. I can't even remember who she was marrying because she got married so many times. But, I mean, that was Hollywood. That was Elizabeth Taylor. And we had helicopters. We hired helicopters and flew over the grounds of Michael Jackson's massive estate, you know, to try and see what was going on, because that's real showbiz. But I agree with both my colleagues here. Brooklyn Beckham is not showbiz. Brooklyn Beckham hasn't even got a job. You know, he's tried to be a photographer. He's tried to be a chef.
He made a bacon sandwich on telly and called himself a chef.
Yeah, exactly. And I feel very sorry for young Brooklyn. He's 4 years younger than his bride. Now, his bride at least is being doted on by her billionaire father. And you can understand that. It's a Donald Trump type thing, OK? And that happens in America. Wealthy men splash out on their daughters' weddings. But I would never have allowed my son to get dragged into such a ridiculous and pompous blinking operation with all these tents put up along the front of the estate that they own in Florida. And the other thing I'd say is, I think it's in very bad taste when what's going on in Ukraine, which is a worldwide problem, and bodies are being dug out of rubble, I think it's in incredibly bad taste to go ahead and make this splurge on money and glitz and glamour, and Gordon Ramsay turns up. Gordon Ramsay would turn up for the opening of an envelope, wouldn't he? Let's face it. But he turns up to be alongside the Beckhams. I think it's incredibly bad taste. I don't think it should have gone ahead. And I like the way Paul McCartney deals with his children. You very, very rarely see a picture of Paul McCartney's son James, because he has not followed in the greatness that his father has created and therefore stays in the shadows. And that's actually what Brooklyn should do.
Rebecca, what is the right way to have a showbiz wedding, do you think?
It depends on who you are. The right way for Brooklyn Beckham. With everything that is going on, I think that we all do slightly like some light-hearted stuff going on. But I think that £3 million on one wedding is excessive by it. And I've had 2 weddings. I love wedding cake. I will do it all over again. But £3 million, whether you can afford it or whether you can't, do it in privacy, whatever. But let's not bash the newspapers with it and hire PR teams to try and make it a thing. It's not the thing.
So it's not the money.
3 Bob weddings,
Chris?
So it's not the money. So it's not the money. It's the publicity. If they want to spend £3 million in the wedding, crack on. It's nothing. He's worth. Beckham's worth 300. That's his dad. The mum and dad, 380 million. So it's chicken feed. So it's chicken feed to them. If you want to spend it on your son getting married, crack on. It's the fuss that everyone's making about it. You know, and Mike, I don't understand why
miserable. He looks miserable. There was an article about him in the newspaper. I think it was yesterday. He was on one of them little golf carts and they were chasing him with photographers. He's literally got his head in his hands. He's getting married today. He should be thrilled. He's not. He's miserable.
Kinsey.
Yeah, well, no, I was going to say about the Ukraine bit. Go on.
Go for it, Chris.
Well, no, I was just to understand the relevance of Ukraine or whatever's going on around the world.
Too much suffering in the world, Chris. There's too much suffering in the world for people to suddenly say, oh, the rest of the world's got nothing to do with us because we're rich billionaires in America.
Mike, if you're...
It's got everything to do with
hold on, no, Mike, if your son or your daughter was getting married and you could afford to spend £1,000 on their marriage, would you go, oh, I'm not doing it because there's a war in Ukraine?
Yeah, I would. I would cut down.
No, come on, Mike. All sorts of people are living their life. And look, I mean, what's going on in Ukraine is awful, but everybody... I got up this morning and I played golf.
Have you donated to Ukraine? I'm going to ask as
No. I wouldn't even go there. But I played golf at a top golf club, Woburn.
Yeah?
I played this morning. I'm not in Ukraine.
No.
I'm not in... So I'm getting on with my life. If these guys are getting on with their life, they've got on with their life.
Got billions.
My challenge is...
They've got billions and they can help people in Ukraine. And it's a worldwide effort to try and restore Ukraine and to get rid of the ogre called Putin. And we all have a responsibility to do that. Listen, Brooklyn Beckham's wedding is a disgrace in the way the world at the moment is trying to deal with a huge problem which threatens
it's got nothing to do with the problem.
It threatens the peace of the whole world.
What Brooklyn Beckham's wedding threatens the peace of the whole world. But it's got nothing to do with it. Whether he gets married... Whether he gets married or not...
Chris,
what is happening in Ukraine is threatening the pease of the world.
Chris Akabusi, I want to hear what you think, Chris.
It's not a time to have a lavish wedding like this. It's ridiculous.
I just want to think, the guy's getting married and his dad wants to spend a few bob and then get married. It's more than I could ever dream of. It's more than I've actually earned. But if those guys want to do it, they want to do it. It's got nothing to do with Ukraine or me playing golf or Porky Parry writing the book.
Chris Akabusi, read the room. There's a war on. We've just had a recession. We've had a pandemic.
That's right.
So I can't get married. Yeah, I'll check you out.
Get married, but go to a Wetherspoons, or if you're in America, go to Arby's.
Oh, Beckham.
Listen, Kinsey, you must have the last word because you are the queen of US showbiz and royal reporting. What do you think?
I understand the argument that, we're in the middle of a war and that perhaps it should be low key. I'm okay with spending the money, but I'm not okay with the helicopters, and I'm not okay with some publicity person sending us tweets every 3 minutes.
Yeah. Wise words. Kinsey, what a treat to have you back on the show. We'll see you in a week's time. The queen of US showbiz, royal and political reporting. Check out her fantastic website, which is full of exclusives on royal stories. It's called To Die For Daily. She's got a book about Diana coming out later in the year, which we'll be reviewing on this programme. And Kinsey joins us live in the studio here in the UK in June. Can't wait for that one. Lots to come. We've got another great British game show. More from my fantastic panel. And we'll be looking at whether science has gone too far in keeping us looking young. See you shortly.
Europe is in the grip of the most devastating humanitarian crisis since World War II.
The people of Ukraine are facing unimaginable suffering
as their homes are destroyed and their loved ones are killed.
Millions of people are being forced to flee for their lives, carrying only their children, their pets, and the clothes on their back.
The pain, loss and destruction grows by the day.
The people of Ukraine urgently need our help.
Already a vast humanitarian operation is underway. Britain's Disasters Emergency Committee, or DEC, brings together 15 leading aid charities to respond to overseas disasters quickly and efficiently. These charities include the British Red Cross, CARE, Oxfam, Save the Children and World Vision.
Their teams are working on the ground in Ukraine and neighbouring countries to bring vital aid to those who need it most. If you can spare it, your gift to the DEC's humanitarian appeal will go a really long way.
£10 provides essential hygiene supplies for a person for a month.
£50 provides blankets for 4 families.
£100 provides emergency food for 2 families per month.
It's easy to give. You can donate online at dec.org.uk or call the 24-hour donation line on 0370 60 60 900. If you prefer to send a cheque, please post it to the Ukraine Humanitarian Appeal, PO Box 999, London, EC3A 3AA. To give £10 on your mobile, simply text the word crisis to 70150. Standard network charges apply for calls and you must be 16 or over. Texts are charged at the standard network rate and your £10 donation will be added to your bill.
100% of your donation goes directly to the DEC to save lives and deliver critical support where it's needed.
Course.
Still reacting to the big stories of the day, my fantastic panel, Chris Akabusi, Rebecca Jane and Mike Porky Parry. It's the dream team tonight. And let's have a look at this one. Both men and women have been searching for a solution to their ageing problems for years. But now scientists have made a breakthrough by reprogramming skin cells. Boffins from the University of Cambridge can now reverse the ageing process by, wait for it, 30 years. That's right, reverse the ageing process. Researchers say they're even able to partly restore functions that have been lost in older cells. So could this be the secret of eternal youth? But Chris Akabusi, do we want eternal youth?
No, I don't think so. I think death is a great thing because it reminds you to enjoy and engage with your life in the here and now. And the idea that you would have a bunch of scientists mess around with cell therapy would really worry me. When I read the piece, it talks about the mechanism behind a successful transient reprogramming is not yet fully understood and is the next piece of the puzzle. So this is really Frankenstein's monster. And my theory is that you can release a virus into the community and the whole world will shut. Oh, we've had that one.
Yeah, I know. It's a very good point. And you raise a great question there, Rebecca Jane, which is, has science gone too far? You know, have we, if COVID came from a lab leak, what are you doing to your body with these new cells to make yourself younger? Leave well alone.
Oh, well, I'm not going to agree with that, am I?
Well, listen, RJ, there's nothing we'd change about you.
Exactly. Absolutely.
You don't need
what,
any
before
treatment.
or after all of the Botox and the filler? Do you know what? And the amount of times I sit on this little old sofa and get absolutely hounded for the filler that's been in my face is ridiculous.
Well, you want the filler?
Little bit, dear. I am all for... trying to halt the age process slightly, but yes, when we start getting into man-made things again, let's just not.
It's not even halting the process, it's taking it back, isn't it? Yeah. Turning it back. Can I just show this to the camera? Look, this was a report about this story which shows Keith Richards minus 30 years, right? Now, isn't Keith Richards famous for having the most lived-in face
100%.
in the history of rock and roll?
Completely right.
Why would you want Keith Richards' craggy, broken face on this side to end up looking like a choir boy on the other side?
I think we improve with age. We improve with age, and Mike Parry is the best proof of that.
Well, I agree.
Well, listen, just a minute to play tonight's Great British Game Show, and it's based around celebrities and their posh weddings, which we've been talking about, and it's called In Sickness and in Wealth. I want you at home in our panel to guess how much money these celebrities spent on their wedding. Let's start with Kim Kardashian and Kanye West in 2014. Did they spend 1.8 million, 2.8 million or 3.8 million?
3.8.
No, would you believe it was 3.8 million? They splashed the cat. That's a shocking amount of money. David and Victoria Beckham, 800,000, a million or 1.5?
1.5.
Well, it was quite a long time ago, 800k. Yeah. Tiger Woods and Ellen Nordengren, 1 million, 1.5 or 2?
2.
1.5, would you believe? Right. There you go. He saved some for the teas and the expensive golf clubs. Harry and Meghan, did they spend... I mean, I can't believe these figures.
Who spent the money?
You won't believe this, right?
Didn't we spend that?
Well, we splashed it. You're right, because if you include...
35.
If you include... Oh, you're good, right? The three, jump in early with a suggestion, but 35 million, 42 or 54?
I'd say 35.
And you're saying 42? Chris Akabusi?
I'm going Mike Porky Parry because he knows the score.
He does. But let me tell you, 42 million pounds.
Oh,
we want our money back. We want our money back. How about Brad Pitt and Jennifer Aniston? 1 million, 2 million or 3?
2.
1.
Yes, exactly right. Brad's a cheapskate. Yeah, it was 1 million. That's right, that wedding was the pits.
Yep.
Oh.
There you go. I'm here all week.
Oh, my God.
No.
Try the liver. Charles and Diana. 1981, did they spend 40, 44 or 48?
44.
40.
Would you believe it maxed out at £48 million?
Wow.
And although we sadly lost Diana, I still think it was worth every penny.
That was worth it.
One of the great weddings of history, wasn't it? And listen, one of the great shows that we've done. What an incredible panel. We loved every second of your company. So many emails coming in who are loving the work of my panel. But of course, this show is nothing without you. Thank you so much for your company, for your emails, for hanging out with me for 2 hours. Shall we do it all again tomorrow at 9? I'd love to have you there. We've saved up a brilliant, brilliant lineup. And I'm sticking around for headliners after the news. See you in 2.
Looking ahead to tomorrow's weather, and the UK is looking largely dry and fine after a cold and frosty start for many. Let's take a look at the details. Zooming into the southwest, and for many it will be a frosty but sunny start. Western Cornwall, however, will see more in the way of cloud with an increasing breeze. Further east into southeast England and East Anglia, there will be a plenty of sunshine around first thing. It'll be cold though, with a widespread rural frost. Wales and the Midlands will also get off to a frosty start, but there'll be some high cloud around, making the sunshine hazy. Northwestern England may see a fair bit of cloud first thing, but this should break up to allow some sunny intervals. Towards the coast, we may also see the odd spot of rain. Moving across the Pennines, and we will be back into the sunshine during the morning. The clearer skies, however, will give us a widespread frost first thing, especially away from the bigger cities. Up into Scotland, and there will be some wintry showers, but many southern areas should be dry. It'll be a cold start with perhaps the odd slippery patch around. Finally, over into Northern Ireland, and it will be a little less cold here, but it'll also be cloudier. The best of any sunshine will be in the east. Looking ahead towards lunchtime, and many parts will remain dry with sunny spells, although rain will reach the far west. And that is how the weather is shaping up during tomorrow morning.
My name is Andrew Doyle. Join me every Sunday evening at 7 p.m. for Free Speech Nation. This is a show where we address current affairs and news stories of the week